Today we're out here in Northern California taking a look at the all-new 2018 Lexus LS. The Lexus LS is a very special vehicle for Lexus and actually for me as well, because in 1989, 28 years ago, the LS was the first Lexus introduced to the United States, and it really started off the brand. And that first Lexus LS is the car that my best friend's father purchased in 1990, and he was such a fan of the Lexus and believed in everything that Lexus stood for so firmly that it really got me interested in cars. He was very interested in luxury, reliability, and perfection in assembly, and that is exactly what Lexus has always stood for. But over the years and successive generations, the LS got a reputation for being a little bit boring. It also had an interior in this last generation that was a notch behind the rest of the competition. But that is very different for this all-new LS. In this video, we'll be taking a look at not just the Lexus LS in the regular gasoline version right here, but also the all-new Lexus LS 500 Hybrid. Up front, we see the latest evolution of Lexus's design language. They call this grille the spindle grille. It has become a little bit larger in this generation, but it also looks better attached to the car. And that's because when the LS first received the new Lexus grille, they really just grafted it onto an existing model. But this LS, being an all-new model, was designed to have this grille from the start, and it really shows because of the way it's integrated with the rest of the car. The brown car that we're looking at now is not the F-Sport model, so we have a slightly different grille up front than we have in the F-Sport trim, and of course a slight variation in the hybrid as well. The grilles on either side of this large spindle grille, the one over here and the one over there on that other side, are functional. This one is used for cooling. There's actually a small radiator right back there. And although this one looks blanked out, it actually serves an aerodynamic purpose. They both do. They both help relieve some of the air pressure up front and distribute it right back here through the wheel well. That helps improve overall aerodynamics. Lexus has been known for making vehicles with a high level of standard equipment, and that's true for the LS as well. Full LED headlamps are standard on all LS models, and you can see that we have a variation of Lexus's distinctive swoop right here in the headlamp module. The entire headlamp module is sort of shaped like the swoop. It actually has kind of a Z-shaped over here on the side. Behind this large Lexus logo, we find a standard radar sensor because very much like the Toyota brand, Lexus has gone all in on active safety. All LS models sold in America will come with Lexus's latest active safety package standard. That will include radar adaptive cruise control, auto high beams, autonomous braking with pedestrian detection, and lane keeping assistance. In order to help improve pedestrian safety, in addition to detecting pedestrians, we also have a pop-up hood that gives them a little bit more cushion if you were to, for some reason, plow one over. The model we're looking at has their expanded safety system package, and that includes a stereo camera system right up here instead of the single camera system, and then we have expanded radar sensors that look out on a larger field of view. In addition to the expanded detection systems, we also have an absolutely enormous heads-up display positioned right there in front of the driver. Thanks to the additional sensors, this car has expanded auto brake functionality, and it will also steer to try and avoid certain situations. So if the car is traveling along and I as a pedestrian am not paying attention and I'm trying to walk in front of the car, this will not only try and stop, but if it needs to, it can actually steer out of the way of the pedestrian. And in that process, obviously, it's checking to make sure that it's not steering into anything important on the other side. Also included in this package is rear cross-traffic auto braking, stationary object auto braking, and an expanded lane keeping assistance system. At over 206 inches long, the LS has grown considerably for the 5th generation. This is now 3 inches longer than the long wheelbase last generation LS, and that puts this in very firm competition to the long wheelbase 7 Series, S-Class, and Audi A8. From the side profile, we see a little bit of the previous generation LS and perhaps a little bit of Maserati Quattroporte going on. We have some definitely defined haunches out back and a really strong one right up front, just behind this headlamp module. This particular styling cue was made possible because Lexus not only lowered the front end of the vehicle, rounded it off a little bit, but they also pushed the front tire further forward. Elegant and restrained is typically the mantra used when designing a modern luxury sedan, and that's definitely what's going on with the LS as well. The front end is a little bit more exciting, but the rear end is a little bit more traditional. We still have some themes that tie everything together, like these Lexus swooshes in the LED tail lamp modules and this chrome strip on each side, and then of course something that mimics the spindle grille going on up front. We have dual exhaust tips right down below, integrated into the bumper, and a little LS 500 badge over there on the other side. Although the badge says LS 500, we don't find Lexus's 5-liter naturally aspirated V8 engine under the hood. Instead, we find an all-new 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 engine. Now, Lexus didn't just take their previous V6 and jam 2 turbochargers on it. They actually went back to the drawing board and designed a completely new engine. This engine features a narrower bore, a longer stroke, dual variable valve timing, and an all-new direct injection system. Thanks to the twin turbochargers and the air-to-water intercoolers found on top of the engine, this produces 416 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque. This engine is mated only to a new 10-speed automatic transmission, the first one in the luxury segment, sending power to either the rear wheels or to all four wheels if you choose all-wheel drive. Fuel economy comes in at 21 miles per gallon combined for the all-wheel drive model, 23 for rear-wheel drive. The hybrid model is very different from the previous generation LS hybrid, which was a range-topping model. This hybrid system is far more attainable. Instead of a V8, we find a 3.5-liter V6 engine borrowed from a few other Lexus vehicles, and it produces 295 horsepower all on its own. It's mated to an all-new 4-speed hybrid automatic transmission. The new transmission is designed to not only improve efficiency, but also improve performance. Interestingly enough, it's also designed to imitate a 10-speed automatic transmission as it shifts. Total power output of the hybrid system is 354 horsepower, and you can get it with rear-wheel drive or a mechanical all-wheel drive system as well. So the all-wheel drive system in this hybrid is very different than the Lexus RX hybrid, which uses an electric rear axle. Fuel economy is obviously the best in the hybrid model, coming in at 28 miles per gallon combined for the rear-wheel drive model, dropping down to 26 if you get all-wheel drive. Every LS sold in America will have a standard adaptive suspension system, but there are actually two different suspensions used. The model we're looking at today has the optional adaptive air suspension. The standard suspension uses fairly traditional dampers that are electronically controlled, but this vehicle uses air struts at all four corners. The air struts not only give a more supple ride, but they can also adjust the height of the vehicle overall. It can raise or lower itself when required. The vehicle obviously lowers itself for aerodynamics. It can then raise itself if you're driving over a large speed bump. And unlike SUVs with air suspension systems, this vehicle actually raises itself to make getting in and out of the car easier. If you haven't driven a car with an air suspension, I would strongly recommend test driving this back-to-back with the standard adaptive suspension system, because air suspensions do have a particular feel to them, and some people really dislike how they feel. It's also important to keep in mind if you're test driving one on the lot, check and see which adaptive suspension it has. A common complaint about the previous generation LS was that the front seats, especially the driver's seat, did not have the same range of motion as a lot of the European options. You couldn't change the curvature of the seat back, we didn't find inflatable bolsters in most models, etc. Sure, you could change the length of the thigh cushion, but overall it just wasn't as adjustable as something like an Audi A8 or a BMW 7 Series. But that's very different for this LS, because we now get an optional 28-way driver's seat. There's so many ways to adjust the seat, they decided physical controls couldn't cut it for all of the motions. So you'll find some of them on the seat control on the side and the rest of them in this infotainment system right here. There's also a tilt telescopic steering column with a large range of motion. The front passenger seat has the same range of motion as the driver, and both of these seats massage in the model that we're driving. Lengthening the LS really helped them improve rear passenger comfort. The model we're driving has the optional reclining rear seats. In addition to the recline mechanism, we can also raise and lower the seat bottom cushion and adjust the curvature of the seat bottom. That easily helps the LS get 10 out of 10 points when it comes to our rear seat comfort index. Now, the only drawback with these particular seats is that adjusting them is done through this touchscreen interface in the fold-down center console. There's no physical button on the seat itself, and it is a little bit more convoluted to adjust than some of the cars that give you physical buttons out back. You should also know that if you're about 6 feet tall like I am and you pop up the pop-out ottoman that this seat also includes, you really can't stretch out because your feet and shoes are still going to be touching the seat back in front of you. A large trunk has been a hallmark of the LS, and that continues for the 2018 model year, although we no longer find a spare tire under the cargo area load floor. Because large luxury cars don't typically have a trunk pass-through, Lexus was able to keep that battery pack right back there against the rear seat, giving you a very square cargo area even in the hybrid trim, although it does become smaller than the gasoline-only version. Since we're driving the model with the optional reclining rear seat package, we'll start out back here. These seats are both heated and ventilated. Between the rear seats, we have an opening center console with 2 USB charging ports, and this is the touchscreen that controls the entire rear seat experience. Hitting the home button turns the display on. We see a status of the vehicle overall, and then we can control a variety of different vehicle functions. From the audio system, we can turn it on and off, change sources, that sort of thing, to the 4-zone climate control system, heated and ventilated rear seats. And we can also adjust the rear seats via this screen, as I said before. We click the right seat there, for instance, we can adjust the seat bottom cushion, the curvature of the seat back, we can adjust the headrest in 4 different ways. And of course, you can control the front seat, moving it out of the way if you want to use the rear seat ottoman. There are also some duplicate buttons for the lighting in the back, and we can control the window shades with these buttons as well. The attention to detail and the parts quality is just as good as we find up front, and the rear window shades are electrically operated. The model we're driving has the optional Mark Levinson sound system, so we have speakers in strategic locations on the ceiling. We have the smaller of the two moonroofs available. A large panoramic moonroof is optional. The driver and the front passenger have manual height adjustable seat belts, and again, these are the 28-way adjustable front seats. Moving over to the front door panels, these are all soft touch materials. We have a variety of different door treatments available in this generation of LS. They've really stepped up the level of customization that you can do. The doors can be done in sort of an optional origami folded fabric, but our model has this faux suede material in this brown section. We then have a leather wrapped armrest and then other stitched materials around the door. Lexus has long been known for their attention to detail when it comes to wood trim, and the new LS is no different. The pattern in this wood trim is not naturally occurring. What they do in order to get this is they take several different layers of real wood veneer, and then they laser cut them out and then assemble them into these patterns. Depending on the interior you're looking at, there are a variety of different wood veneers available, and there's also a glass cut insert available right there on the door. I think that in some ways the glass insert works a little bit better with the overall style of the interior than the wood trim in our particular model. This overall design theme is similar to what we saw in the Lexus LC two-door coupe, but it is a little bit different for the larger LS sedan. On the passenger side, we have what looks like a display, but is actually sort of a trim piece or accent piece right there next to the air vent. We then have these horizontal trim lines running right across the dashboard. More stitched material lower on the dashboard, including the glove box cover, and this is a slot-style glove compartment. In the center of the dashboard, we have this 12.3-inch infotainment display. This system runs a variant of the same software we've seen in other Lexus models for a while, and it's controlled via the Lexus touchpad controller. We don't find Apple CarPlay or Android Auto support in this generation of the software, but we do have smartphone integrated apps. As I said previously, you use this display to adjust the driver and front passenger seat. We can adjust the headrests in and out. The seat back and bottom bolsters can be adjusted separately. You can adjust the curvature of the seat back, the four-way adjustable lumbar support, as well as the shape at the bottom of the seat, and of course the shape at the back of the seat. This is actually a little handier than I thought, because a lot of seats it feels like you're sitting sort of in a donut at the back of the seat, and this one you can sort of raise up the donut to give you a little bit more spine support. The passenger seat has the same range of motion as the driver, and then driver's seat refresh is what Lexus calls the massage functionality. We have several different kinds of massage. I think lumbar is probably my favorite. You can adjust the intensity in several different settings by sliding your finger up and down on the controller. This display is also where we can adjust the seat climate. We can ventilate, we can heat the steering wheel in two different settings, and there's an auto mode that will automatically heat or ventilate the seats or heat the steering wheel depending on what temperature you have selected and how hot or cold it is outside. Below the display, we find the start-stop button, physical volume and tune knob. The tune is this lower ring, volume is the upper ring. Find the controls for the 4-zone automatic climate controls front zones right here. Track forward, backward, radio, and media buttons are physical buttons. And then below that we find the auto brake hold enable disable button, and then a single slot optical disc player. The shifter is a joystick style shifter. We pull over to the left and then pull down for drive. You notice that D light lit up there. Pull over to the left only for neutral. Push towards the front for reverse. Park is this button right here, and if you want manual mode, you just pull it right down. Behind the shifter we find my least favorite infotainment system input method, the Lexus Touch Controller. You use this sort of like a mouse on a laptop. It features haptic feedback when it snaps to particular options in the system. The system also dings when you hit them, and then there's a back button right here. This seems a lot less intuitive than the Audi MMI system or BMW iDrive or Mercedes Command rotary controllers. It might make a little bit more sense if Lexus allowed you to do finger writing input on this screen, but that's not a feature offered in this system. Behind that we have a few different buttons. This raises and lowers the vehicle with the air suspension. We have a button to raise and lower the rear sunshade, and then this button takes you right over to the seat controls in that infotainment system. We then have two large cup holders over here on the right. The center armrest opens from either side. There's enough room right up front to put your key in, but not a larger smartphone like that. Behind there we have a 12-volt power outlet, auxiliary input, two USB inputs, and then a very large storage bin for a rear-wheel drive car, especially a car with the 4-zone automatic climate control system. In a lot of vehicles, this storage compartment gets really tiny if you have the 4-zone system. The large amount of stitched material continues on the driver's side, where we find stitching and soft touch materials separating this LCD instrument cluster section from the physical analog gauges on either side. We have fuel level over here on the right, and then engine temperature on the left. For a modern luxury car, this LCD instrument cluster does appear to be quite small. We do get turn-by-turn navigation directions, our trip computer information, turbo pressure, sway warning readouts. We can adjust certain vehicle settings, that sort of thing, in this display. This is also where you'll find the status of the brake hold system, the lane departure warning system, etc., and the height of the vehicle's suspension. One of the likely reasons that LCD instrument cluster is a little on the small side is because the optional heads-up display is absolutely enormous. In terms of overall size, this is easily double any of the other heads-up displays I've seen or reviewed recently. We have the navigation information over here on the left side of the heads-up display, safety system information right here in the center, and then our tachometer, transmission selection, and then our speed on the right. In addition to all of these displays, there are some active displays like our collision warning displays, pedestrian detection displays, front cross traffic, parking sensors, etc., that all pop up above everything that you're seeing right here. This display is very, very large. It's also very crisp and very easy to read. In fact, during my day in this vehicle, I found myself looking at this display far more often than the LCD instrument cluster, so the relative size of it didn't bother me too much. Working our way back down the dashboard, on the right side of the instrument cluster, we find this drive mode selector. We toggle this mode up for Sport and Sport Plus, down for Comfort and Eco, and we push the button on the side in for Normal. There's a very similar knob on the left side of the instrument cluster. This is how we engage the snow mode and turn off the traction control. The steering wheel is an all-new 3-spoke design with paddle shifters on the back. We have down on the left and up on the right, wood inserts on the upper section and lower sections of the steering wheel, and a leather-wrapped airbag cover. On the left side of the wheel, we find the buttons that control that multifunction LCD instrument cluster, dedicated phone button, voice command button, and volume up-down. On the right side, we find mode, track forward, backward, and the buttons that control the radar adaptive cruise control system, as well as the lane keeping assistance system. Moving over to the driver's side, you can barely see the ambient lighting right down there. And you can also see that these sections of the door are sort of nested. The model I'm driving first is an LS500 with the optional adaptive air suspension and the optional adaptive anti-roll kit. Although I am in Northern California testing this model, I haven't been able to get this on our own home test track. So I'm just gonna have to go with Lexus's 0 to 60 times, which they quote as 4.6 seconds. Lexus tends to be right on the money with their 0 to 60 times. Sometimes their models will be about a tenth of a second faster. So expect this to come in right around that 4.5 to 4.6 second mark, whether we're talking about the rear-wheel drive model or the all-wheel drive model. They do list the all-wheel drive model as being a hair slower 0 to 60, but depending on the surface you're driving on, it may actually be a little bit faster because of the improved traction. Traction is definitely important with this engine because it has over 400 pound-feet of torque at very low RPMs. So this definitely has the same kind of twist that we find in the German luxury vehicles. And that's the biggest difference between the LS500 for 2018 and the previous generation LS. The previous generation model with its naturally aspirated V8 engine had a very traditional luxury car feel. It also had an excellent exhaust note, but it just didn't have the same kind of thrust that we find in the competition from their base turbocharged 6-cylinder engines. Thanks to the power output of this turbocharged engine and of course the 10-speed automatic, 0 to 60 times falls somewhat between the turbocharged V6 and turbocharged V8 competition. Lexus spent a great deal of time trying to get as much weight out of the LS as possible. Depending on the version that you drive, this could weigh between about 4,300 pounds and about 4,900 pounds if you get the heaviest version possible. That really helps out when it comes to the 0 to 60 score, the handling score, and of course the braking score. Now I haven't been able to test this again on my own home test track, but in our 60 to 0 tests, this stopped in 121 feet. That's pretty good for a full-size luxury sedan. You should expect the F-Sport trim of the LS500 to stop even shorter because it's equipped with wider tires and an upgraded brake package. It's difficult to talk about overall handling ability again because we haven't had this on our own home turf, but I'm going to give this an A- when it comes to overall handling ability. We don't find the same kind of oversized tire options that we find in a lot of the German luxury sedans, but if you're going to compare this to like models of the A8 or the 7 Series or the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, this is going to be more like the 7 Series than the Mercedes or the Audi. The Audi A8 has a very distinct front-heavy weight bias, and if you were to put comparable tires on the LS as on the Audi A8, this is definitely going to outhandle it, largely because of that front weight bias. It also is going to affect the way the vehicle feels out on the road. Because we're driving the model with the optional adaptive air suspension, the ride score in this vehicle is easily the equal of the Mercedes-Benz S-Class with their Airmatic system. This is going to be the most comfortable version of the LS on long highway trips, and more comfortable than some of the competition that does not offer an adaptive air suspension system. Air suspensions can have a vaguely floaty-boaty quality to them at times, but Lexus has done a good job at controlling the way this system behaves. The model that we're driving also has the adaptive roll system, which helps keep the vehicle a little bit more level in the corners. The air suspension adds a little bit of weight to the vehicle, and it logically also reduces the handling ability of the car very slightly. But this air suspension system is very dialed in. Now, we still have the ability to change the way it feels. We have comfort, we have a normal mode, and we have sport and sport plus. Sport plus definitely firms things up. The air suspension system also offers an increased ride height mode, and when we engage that, you can actually still drive out on country lanes in the increased ride height mode. That's important if you live on a less than perfect road surface like I do. I live out in the country on a gravel road, and that would mean you're less likely to scrape things than if you got the LS without the air suspension. Keeping in mind that this was not tested on our usual road surface, we scored 68 decibels at 50 miles an hour, making this easily one of the quietest vehicles we have ever tested. Over a day of mixed driving, we've been averaging about 20 miles per gallon, which is fairly similar to what the previous generation got. In terms of overall fuel economy, this is a little bit ahead of some of the competition, but it's pretty average overall. And now we're taking the hybrid for a spin. The first thing you'll notice right away is how different this feels than the other Lexus hybrids, except of course for the LC500 hybrid. That's because the hybrid drivetrain under this hood is very different than the old Lexus LS hybrid, which had a modified version of the same hybrid system that we find in the Lexus GS sedan. The Lexus GS uses a single planetary gear set with 2 electric motors in order to move power from the engine through the hybrid system and out to the wheels. That's the same basic format in all of the Lexus hybrids, whether we're talking about the Lexus ES hybrid or the RX hybrid or the Lexus NX hybrid. But this hybrid system is a little bit different because Lexus has also incorporated an actual 4-speed automatic transmission jammed under the hood as well. The 4-speed automatic is added to the planetary hybrid power split device. It does not replace it. The 4-speed automatic helps give this a more traditional feel while at the same time improving performance and efficiency. According to Lexus, acceleration drops by half a second versus the regular LS500s. This comes in at 6.1 seconds 0 to 60. Logically, braking distances also increase a little bit because of the added weight that we find in this sedan. But it is still under 5,000 pounds, and there are a few full-size luxury sedans that go over that 5,000 pound mark. Although this hybrid system sounds similar to what we find under the hood of some of the German competition, this is actually very different. That's because we still have that twin-motor planetary hybrid power split system under the hood. We don't just have a traditional multi-speed automatic and a pancake motor and a clutch. The main benefits to this system are efficiency and of course drivetrain smoothness, because there's no clutch and there's no torque converter to worry about. Although occasionally this system can feel sort of like a CVT, it also has definite shifts to it. And that's very different than something like a Toyota Prius, which just spins up to a particular RPM and hangs out there. Interestingly enough, we get more engine noise out of the hybrid version than we find in the non-hybrid version, and that was noticeable in our cabin noise test. We scored 69 decibels, still very quiet for this category, but a little bit louder than the non-hybrid model. One of the other interesting things about the LS hybrid is that they decided to give this the same mechanical all-wheel drive system that we find in the regular LS. That's different than some of Lexus's other hybrids, like the Lexus NX hybrid or the Lexus RX hybrid, which use an electric motor on the other axle to power it. So this is going to be just as capable as the regular Lexus LS all-wheel drive system, just has a hybrid engine under the hood. Aside from a slight reduction in trunk space and a half-second reduction in 0 to 60 time, the LS hybrid is very much like the regular Lexus LS. The drivetrain feels a little bit different, but the difference is not as large as the hybrid or plug-in hybrids that we see from Germany, because of the way those transmissions are designed. That means if you're looking for a large luxury sedan with no compromise high fuel economy, this is likely going to be one of the best options. Especially if you've driven some of the German vehicles and you think to yourself, this hybrid system is just not as smooth as I would like it to be. If you want to get your hands on the all-new LS, you will be able to find it at dealers in February of 2018. Now, I suspect, but they haven't confirmed, that the hybrid model will go on sale right at the same time as the LS500 that I've been driving today. Lexus has yet to announce pricing for the LS500 or the LS hybrid, so we don't know how much the model I've been driving will actually cost you. Lexus has said that the LS will in general start right around $75,000. They don't expect the hybrid to be that large of a premium over the regular model, and most LS shoppers will roll off the dealer lot for under $85,000. That means that this is still going to be significantly less expensive than something like a Mercedes-Benz S-Class or most configurations of the BMW 7 Series or Audi A8. The German options can get very expensive, especially the Mercedes S-Class if you start adding options. It's not unusual to find a Mercedes S-Class with the base engine on a dealer lot costing $120,000 or $130,000, and this is going to be significantly less expensive. It almost goes without saying that the 2018 Lexus LS is going to be one of the most reliable full-size luxury sedans in America, and it also is going to have one of the best resale values in America. But for 2018, it goes a step further, giving us one of the best standard engines in the segment, the only 10-speed automatic you can find in a full-size luxury sedan at the moment, and a hybrid that reasonable people might actually want to buy. 0 to 60 performance in the hybrid model is a little bit lower than this twin-turbo V6, but it's perfectly acceptable for the full-size luxury sedan segment, and it will get you nearly 30 miles per gallon. Perhaps more importantly than that, however, this Lexus LS finally has the luxury trappings inside the cabin that we've come to expect from the European competition. The front seats are incredibly comfortable, and the interior is crafted with the kind of precision that you've come to expect from a luxury brand. That's a solid move for the Lexus brand because the previous generation LS did not compare that well with newcomers like the Genesis G90, which delivered a very similar driving experience with honestly a superior cabin. But thankfully, this is a different LS and in many ways a very different Lexus. Be sure and stay tuned for our complete review on the 2018 LS500 or LS500 hybrid when we can get our hands on one for a complete week. In the meantime, check out those related videos down there at the bottom of your screen. Hit the subscribe button. Find us over at facebook.com/AlexandAutos. And if you want to support this channel, head over to patreon.com. I'll see you next week.